How are Donald Hoffman's interface theory, Heisenberg cut, David Bohm's implicate order, and vacuum genesis similar to Buddhist philosophies? By Trinh. Here's a quick overview of how the talk will begin. I'll begin with a brief introduction to set the stage and explain the motivation behind the comparison between Buddhist thought and modern physics. Then we'll explore a series of key pairings, starting with Pratityasamutpada, or dependent origination, alongside David Bohm's theory of the implicate order. From there, we'll look at Vikalpa, or conceptual construction, in relation to Heisenberg's cut in quantum mechanics. We'll then explore Yogacara, a Buddhist school focused on consciousness, and how its ideas align with Donald Hoffman's interface theory of perception. After that, I'll connect the concept of samsara, the cycle of rebirth, with theories of vacuum genesis and cosmology. I'll then summarize the key insights across these comparisons and end with a few implications, both philosophical and scientific, that emerge from this dialogue. Introduction. In modern physics, quantum physics has continually challenged our view of the universe. It proposes a reality that is indeterministic and fluid. Buddhist philosophy challenges conventional notions of reality, suggesting that the mind and self are also impermanent and constantly changing. Though these worldviews come from different cultures and traditions, they both confront the idea of a stable world. Looking at both quantum physics and Buddhism can provide original approaches to how we perceive the workings of our universe, the mind, and reality. Pratityasamutpada and Bohm's implicate order. So here, I am looking at two different concepts, one from ancient Buddhist philosophy and one from modern physics. Pratityasamutpada teaches that nothing exists independently or separately. The existence of everything comes into being through a web of causes and effects, a tree or a thought. All of these are conditioned by what came before and give rise to what comes next. This doctrine applies not just to physical phenomena, but also mental and emotional states. On the other hand, David Bohm's implicate order describes a layered reality. He proposed that the everyday material world around us is merely the explicate order, or a surface-level reality. Beneath that is a deeper, interconnected field, called the implicate order. That's where everything is enfolded into everything else. Bohm compared this to a hologram, where each part contains the whole. Both of these perspectives point to a reality that could be fundamentally interconnected, with nothing existing in isolation and each moment arising from the moments before it. Heisenberg cut and Vikalpa. Vikalpa refers to the mental process of dividing and conceptualizing our experiences. The dividing can be likened to a prism splitting white light into a rainbow. The prism is the act of Vikalpa, separating whole experience into individual parts. It's the tendency of the mind to categorize, label, and separate continuous experiences into discrete parts. This mental activity creates the illusion of a divide and separateness in what is a seamless flow. The Heisenberg cut is a concept from quantum physics that refers to a theoretical boundary between the realms of classical and quantum physics, between the observer and the observed. Fundamentally, the Heisenberg cut can be understood as a form of Vikalpa, a boundary constructed by the mind to make sense of a complex and interconnected reality. Just as how Vikalpa can divide experiences, the Heisenberg cut divides physical reality into distinct domains for practical understanding, though reality as a whole may be continuous. Donald Hoffman's interface theory and Yogacara. Yogacara, a key school of thought in Mahayana Buddhism, describes how all occurrences are illusory and projections of consciousness. The concept of Yogacara revolves around the doctrine of Sit-mata, or Vijipnati Matra, which translates to mind only and consciousness only, respectively. Yogacara is the concept that nothing inherently independent exists. All thoughts, forms, and feelings are connected and part of a greater whole. Donald Hoffman's interface theory of perception, or ITP, suggests that the world we see is not objective reality. Everything we perceive, trees, buildings, and people, are all icons on the desktop interface of reality. This is similar in the way that a text file is not a literal sheet of paper, but simply binary code, zeros and ones. Viewing reality through inaccurate lens has its advantages. For example, the less truth one sees, the less energy one expends. From a survival standpoint, it is evolutionarily smarter to show less to an organism, so that the organism only sees what it needs to survive. Hoffman also discussed the idea of a conscious agent, an entity that experiences, determines, and acts. These conscious agents can include animals to humans, which interact with each other to form networks, which we perceive as reality. Aspects such as shape and color are not fundamental structures, but output of a set of interactions. So then, if all phenomena are merely projected by consciousness and only arise from interactions between agents, then the math that is so useful in describing reality based on these phenomena must be inadequate in describing true reality. True reality could be beyond the scope of mathematics and physics, and only scraping the bare surface of reality. Vacuum genesis and samsara. Samsara is the idea of a cyclical universe based on your karma, which is comprised of all voluntary thoughts and actions. Karma is responsible for choosing the reality you perceive. The alaya vijnana, or storehouse consciousness, is responsible for holding all of one's karmic seeds, or bija. These seeds, which are composed of one's habits and preferences, are what grows into the reality you perceive. The universe is an endless continuum that relies on a web of causes and effects. In contrast, vacuum genesis is the theory that the universe sprang into existence from quantum fluctuations in a vacuum. These fluctuations arise from the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which mandates that you can only know so much, such as knowing the position of a particle than knowing the velocity of the particle with less certainty, and vice versa. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle allows for the existence of these fluctuations when a particle and its antiparticle pop into existence and fall back to the vacuum again. This can be expressed through the equation delta E times delta T is greater than or equal to h bar over 2. This equation allows for the small fluctuations in energy. Energy from these fluctuations can give way to mass, according to Einstein's famous equation E equals mc squared. Whether which way of looking at the universe is more accurate could perhaps be inconceivable. Maybe it cannot be known whether which view of the universe, samsara or vacuum genesis, is a better framework for reality. If one were to recall Donald Hoffman's interface theory of perception, which proposed that everything in our reality are merely icons, then perhaps the math that relies on these icons is merely surface level too. This view is also seen in the Advaita Vedanta, a doctrine which says that consciousness is what makes up true reality, and it is formless and outside observation. Additionally, Gödel's unknowable theorem suggests that it is impossible for one to know about a system if they are in a system itself. Summary. Quantum physics and Buddhism, though both different in culture and views, offer similar ways of looking at the true nature of reality. For example, Pratityasamutpada and David Bohm's Implicate order, though separated by many years, both speak similarly of a universe that is deeply connected. Vikalpa, the act of creating boundaries in otherwise seamless experiences, correlates to the Heisenberg cut, a theoretical boundary that divides the worlds of quantum and classical physics. The Heisenberg cut is an act of Vikalpa. It divides a seamless reality into discrete parts for practical understanding. Yogacara and Donald Hoffman's interface theory of perception describe a reality that is only a construct of the mind. Properties such as color, shape, and size are not underlying structures of reality, but the products of interacting conscious agents. The math that relies on these properties must only be useful in describing interface reality, not true reality. Samsara and vacuum genesis are both different in their ways of expressing the origins of reality. Samsara is an endless continuum, relying on a web of cause and effect, while vacuum genesis is the spontaneous existence of a particle and its opposite. Implications. Finally, the implications in my research. In both Buddhism and quantum physics, the nature of reality have both been examined, though through vastly different lenses shaped by time and culture. However, both frameworks had arrived at much of the same conclusion that the essence of existence, how things truly are. Moreover, both perspectives challenge our views of a stable reality, offering a universe that is ephemeral, with no inherent existence, relying on the existence of other objects. Modern physics and Buddhism have also both reached the conclusion that the reality we perceive is not true reality, as shown by theories such as Donald Hoffman's interface theory of perception, Gödel's incompleteness theorems, and the Advaita Vedanta, to name a few. And here in my research, it is taken a step further by saying that perhaps genuine existence is unknowable, that perhaps will always be inherently uncertain. So then, is true reality, by its very nature, always ineffable?